To the August 11th, 2020 special city council meeting. Please let the record reflect that all council members are present or will be very shortly. I see their names or their pictures. So we're going to begin this evening with the pledge, and Vice Chair Blair has offered to do that for us. So we'll probably put ourselves on mute.
Okay, would ask all those council members and all those joining us to please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks so much for that. And then after that, I actually forgot to read the statement I needed to read. So there you go. We're starting the night off right. So let me get to that really quick. So this is the council chair determination to hold electronic meetings without anchor location. In accordance with the Utah Code 52.3.207.4, I have determined that conducting meetings of the Ogden City Council with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present due to the infectious nature and potentially dangerous health effects of contracting the COVID-19 virus. This determination is based on the following. Utah has been in a declared state of emergency due to the novel coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 since March 6, 2020. The World Health Organization has characterized the spread of COVID-19 as a pandemic. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, has determined that COVID-19 is easily spread between or among people who are in close contact with each other through airborne respiratory droplets and may be spread by people who are non-symptomatic. Federal, state, and local health authorities recommend limiting public gatherings, wearing face masks, and following social distancing guidelines. That those exposed to individuals experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-quarantine for 14 days, and that individuals experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 self-isolate to prevent and control the continuing spread of COVID-19. Physical distancing measures are difficult to set up and maintain in the City Council chambers. Based on the foregoing, all public meetings, including work sessions and meetings of the Redevelopment Agency, will be held electronically through August 31st, 2020. Information on how to connect to the electronic public meetings will be posted on each agenda. The public may comment during the electronic meeting during public hearings or provide public input on items designated for input on the agenda. General public comments will also be taken during regular meetings. Written public comments may also be submitted through the following electronic options. Telephonic message at 801-629-8158, public comment submission form at ogdencity.com/public input, or email at citycouncil@ogdencity.com. This statement was issued and became effective on August 3rd, 2020. Thanks again for your patience with that. Now I'd ask for you to join me in just a moment of silence, please. Thank you all. So first item on the third item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. And this is the regular meeting of January 28th, 2020. That's Councilmember Heyer.
Yes, Chair, I have reviewed those minutes, found them to be accurate.
And the joint work session of March 12th, 2020, Councilmember Nadolski.
They're good.
Work session of March 31st, 2020, Councilmember Stevens.
Yes, Chair, they're good. I'm sorry I wasn't there at the first. I don't move as quickly as I used to, so that's the reason.
Oh, no, you're okay.
But the minutes are correct.
Thank you. Special meeting of March 31st, 2020, Councilmember Lopez.
Yes, Chair, they're correct.
And the regular meeting of April 7th, 2020, Councilmember White.
Yes, Chair, I reviewed those and they are correct. And with that, I would make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Way and a second by Councilmember Hire to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all so much for reading those. So now we are looking forward to hearing from Clint Spencer, of the planning team, to talk with us more about the Southeast Ogden Community Plan.
Well, good evening again. Always a pleasure to be with you. I'll pull up my presentation here and we'll get started. Okay.
Perfect.
So we're here to discuss once again the Southeast Ogden Community Plan. This has been an ongoing process for a couple of years now, and we're glad to see it come to its fruition and get adopted and underway. In the last meeting, we talked a lot about the plan itself. There's 4 sections generally. There's the transportation, the future zoning, future land use, and then housing portion, and then the open space. A lot of the comments that were made in that meeting were generally about the housing portion and had to deal with accessory dwelling units and how to conquer that, how to handle those in the future. And I know that there were some concerns from the community as well as concerns from the council on just what to do with that accessory dwelling unit issue. So we've kind of, as a staff, we've gone back to the drawing table just a little bit, and we've come up with some alternative language that we hope will clarify the next steps and kind of give a clear process forward of what the community plan is actually trying to accomplish, and give a better perspective on how the next steps will take place. So the first thing I want to talk about is, why do we have community plans? And this is from the Ogden City General Plan itself. In section 14, it talks about community plans. And there's 5 essential objectives for community plans. The first one is to balance interests. In that section, it speaks to there's never one answer, right? And I think that we can accept that for just about anything in the city or in life. There's never just one answer. And as we've gone through this process over the past couple of years, there's always been a very split response from the community for and against accessory dwelling units. So through this community planning process, we took those interests to heart, as well as the community did, and they came up with a compromise. And this compromise is reflected in the community plan on how to deal with accessory dwelling units specifically. So that's one of the first objectives of why we have community plans, is to balance those interests that we find throughout the community, and to accept that, you know, and there's never just one answer. I think when I talk about no one answer, it's, you know, I think that leads to a conversation for compromise and saying that it's never everything against or everything for, but communities should be able to have that kind of voice in their own community. The next objective is to develop a partnership. So as I mentioned before, we've through this process, we formulated a housing steering committee, and through that process, we have developed a partnership with the residents and the residents with the city. And then in that committee as well, there were partnerships developed from neighbor to neighbor, as we discussed how to handle accessory dwelling units and how to deal with housing issues other than accessory dwelling units as well throughout the community. That includes student housing, illegal rentals. How do we enforce all of these regulations that we have in place to help protect the community? And so, I think through that process, the residents that were involved have a better relationship or an understanding of what the city's role is, and we as a city hopefully have some folks that we can lean on to help us, in terms of preservation and enforcement issues. In that steering committee meeting, or the steering committee, we also experienced a pretty equal representation of people, of residents for and against accessory dwelling units. And so, and as I mentioned before, that's something that we've seen very much so throughout this process is a split response, a split representation of people that have been for them and have been against them. So those are the first couple of objectives. The next objective is reestablishing and maintaining the public trust. And to this effect, the plan states that the plan will only be successful in its adoption if everyone knows what it says and what to expect. So community plans are changeable. That's something that we experienced with this community plan since its inception in, over 30 years ago. There's been over a dozen changes to the plan. And it's, they're not, community plans are certainly not ever meant to be a crystal ball or some kind of fortune teller type of exercise, but it's to give some framework and some understanding of how that community plan should look as development takes place throughout the city. So we expect, if there's things that come up in the future, or if there's an opportunity to reconsider some of the provisions within the plan itself, that those changes, those objectives and those goals and strategies could always change, and however the future lays out. The city should follow similar procedures when plans are amended. So in the same way that we're going through this plan now, if the community plan were amended, the city should employ a similar type of procedure to let people know that, hey, your community plan is being changed, come and be involved, let's talk about this. And we do that as we update community plans throughout the city. This one, the most recent, and in the next process, we're looking at the East Central Community Plan, which was adopted in 2015, not quite as old, but there have been some fairly drastic changes within that community, such as the 9 Rails Community Arts District and the BRT line that will be going through there that will affect change one way or the other, whether it's included in the community plan or not. So the community plan, again, is just helpful in a framework of how to move these issues forward in the community. So going back to what the community has stated, so from what was discussed in the housing steering committee, is that they felt there was a perceived breach of trust from the southeastern community to the city, and this occurred when accessory dwelling units were approved citywide. There was very little community input and very little comments during the meetings. You can go back and look at the minutes and see that that's apparent. And these are, when we get into these large citywide amendments, it gets difficult to notice. It's not possible for us to notice everybody in the city about these pending changes, and we do the best that we can in terms of making folks aware of what the changes might be. That being said, when the Southeast Ogden community became aware of what had taken place, they felt that wasn't something that they really shared in common with what maybe other people in the city wanted. And so in an effort to help them protect their community and their neighborhood from what they perceived as things that might compromise their single family neighborhood, especially given their adjacency to Weber State, the community proposed an amendment and brought that forward to the city. So through that amendment process is kind of how we got to where we are today. So I want to go over some of the comments. So the proposal was to not allow accessory dwelling units at all in Southeast Ogden. And it went before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission denied the petition, and then it came before the City Council. And some of the comments that were made during that meeting, I think were important to remember and to recall. Some of those, so one of the comments was that the council wanted to wait to understand the outcome of the Southeast Community Plan process, how will that process will take place, and they thought that the plan process will address the matter better than an independent ordinance that was being proposed would. Another comment included handling this issue, handling accessory dwelling units in a more holistic manner. Looking at how, as was mentioned, ADUs are just one part of housing throughout the community. There's still affordable housing to consider. There's student housing to consider. There's multifamily development to consider in terms of how housing will take. This is just one. The accessory dwelling units is just one piece of that overall housing puzzle. And then it shifts the issue to one of collaboration. So, having the community work together was recommended by the city council. Council stated their confidence in staff and in the commission, and we appreciate that. And I've always felt the support of the council as we've moved through these community plan processes. It's also stated that this community plan process will be beneficial to additional decisions and future decisions that take place. There were a few comments that stated that there was some concern from the council that maybe citywide accessory dwelling units may be too broad. I know in the planning commission meeting that was also a concern for a couple of our planning commissioners, was that maybe we painted the city too broad with a big brush. And then that the city council would support a more narrow focus on the specific neighborhoods of College Heights and Forest Green, which were the two communities that were really petitioning and pushing for this amendment to be heard. Some more of the comments include that going through a community plan will likely adequately assess how to handle the accessory dwelling unit issue. And then there was a comment as well that much of Southeast Ogden is zoned R1, and there's probably a purpose for that zoning. And I know that this was a concern for residents as well, that they felt like, even though it's not entirely the case, that they felt that changing these single-family homes into 2 dwelling units would change the character of their neighborhood. And so that was one of their comments and perceptions as we went through the plan. Council mentioned that they were comfortable allowing staff and the commission to address the accessory dwelling units. And so going back to that reestablishing and maintaining public trust, and this comment is the plan will only be successful if everyone knows what's in it and knows what to expect. And I think as the commission, or as the community came before the commission regarding the accessory dwelling unit, they did expect to have the support of the city council. I apologize that my light keeps turning off. Not sure why that's happening, but we'll just be in the dark.
You have to move around.
Yeah, I tried that a couple times. It's not picking up what I'm putting down. So, so that brings us back to what's included in the plan. And so, as I mentioned before, one of the things that we looked at in the revisions to the plan is, as we heard comments from the last meeting, is maybe providing a better framework for how this next step takes place. What does it look like, and what things will be considered, and what things will be important as we look at establishing any kind of limitation on an accessory dwelling unit. So on the map to the right, you can see that there are several different color blobs. So you've got Weber State that's in the purple, and then IHC campus is in that blue. That's kind of transparent. And then you've got on the northwest, or on the top left-hand side of the community, is the northwest neighborhood. So this neighborhood is already petitioned. They were one of the first community or areas in the city to petition for accessory dwelling units. And so we expect that there will be no limitation of accessory dwelling units in that part of the city as we move forward with this process. The other 3 communities, the College Heights, Forest Green, and South area, did have folks in the steering committee that expressed concern or expressed desire to have some form of limitation how many accessory dwelling units could take place. So this process of amending the ordinance will take place after the plan is adopted one way or the other. So the process we're involved in tonight is essentially just looking at the framework. How is that next process going to take place? And so some of the things that we've included in new language for factors for consideration is to look at additional housing pressures, neighborhood experiences, given as it's adjacency to Weber State campus. I think I covered this in another slide, but we've talked to some traffic and parking enforcement about what kinds of pressures do they see in these communities that are closer to Weber State. Previous decisions for areas that have stemmed from petitions to have or not have accessory dwelling units. And again, this goes back to that Northwest neighborhood petitioning for them. And again, the folks from the College Heights and the Forest Green neighborhoods petitioning to not have them. So taking into consideration what's already been desired in certain neighborhoods. And then looking at the types of housing needs, and again, going back to that broader puzzle of housing in general, and just looking at this accessory dwelling unit as one of the elements of that housing picture. How does multiple family housing or low density housing options come into play, or how does student housing affect housing overall in the community plan? And those, specifically the student housing issue and multifamily housing issues, those have been covered in the plan, and how those will take place. And going back to speaking to where they're going to be on major arterial corridors and places that will more easily accommodate that type of use, and keep it from having an overly negative effect on single-family neighborhoods. Looking at the city's overall approach to affordable housing as well, making sure that we're not excluding people from living within the city by limiting these accessory dwelling units, and getting an equal representation. So just as we did before in the housing committee meetings, making sure that we have an equal representation of people that are for and against accessory dwelling units, and I'm sure that we'll have to work out some sort of compromise in this next zoning process as well. So another statement that has been changed is allowing, this area in the red, the south area, again, as we met with the folks in the housing committee, there was concern from the neighborhood in the red as well, that they wanted to have some sort of limitation. So some of the language in the plan was adopted to make that provision, not saying that it has to take place, but allowing that framework to take place if that's how the community feels they want to move forward. So as we look at community pressures adjacent to Weber State, again, I mentioned that I spoke with one of the city traffic engineers and our parking enforcement, and they clearly expressed an opinion and an observation from their professional
points of view
that there is a heavier traffic and parking demand from 36 to Country Hills Drive, and where you see those additional housing or those additional traffic pressures, you'd probably also likely see housing pressures as well. People that want to live closer to campus, that want to be able to, to maybe walk to campus or not have to pay for parking or whatever the case might be. Another thing that we looked at as well, and this is reflected on the map to the right, is we looked at, how many of the owners in the neighborhood are not actually living on the property or have that as their primary residence. And we found in the Forest Green neighborhood about 9%, College Heights about 16%, and then the Skyline area, what I'm calling the Skyline area, that's not really a title for it, but that green area to the right, it's also semi-adjacent to the Weber State campus. That's about 10%. So you can look at that College Heights and see that there's clearly a higher level of owner absentee people in that area, and maybe some more pressure for single family home rentals, which is a permitted use. in all of our single family zones. I also spoke with some of the residents that were in favor of limiting accessory dwelling units, as they've been very involved in the process and very involved in the previous accessory dwelling unit ordinance amendment. And I just wanted to get some information from them on their, on their neighborhood itself. And they stated that there's about 13 currently illegal accessory dwelling units in Forest Green. And what would make them illegal is that they're not currently licensed. We don't have a permit for any of them. And not necessarily that they're operating illegally in terms of how many people are in there, but we just don't have a license. We haven't done a home or a fit premise inspection, which just goes to look at, in all of our rental situations, we do a fit premise inspection where we can go and look, make sure that the situations that people are living in are actually safe and that they're not going to be an issue when, when a hazard arises. Also, they spoke about they prefer a maximum of 20% of the neighborhood at a maximum to be allowed to have accessory dwelling units. So looking at the Forest Green and College Heights, they probably average between the two of them about 120 single family homes. And if you take that 120 single family homes and apply, maybe 15 to 20%, we're looking at 18 to 24 accessory dwelling units in those areas as a maximum. So where they're looking at right now, 13 of these accessory dwelling units taking place without permits, for them to allow up to 18 to 24 accessory dwelling units in their community. And this would be for each community, not just for the Southeast Ogden community as a whole, but Forest Green would have, possibly 15 to 20%, which would be 18 to 24 in Forest Green, 18 to 24 in College Heights, and potentially many more in that south area that I showed before, given how large the geographic area is and how many single family homes are likely included in that.
Sorry, I was going to ask, would you mind taking questions now, or you want us to wait till the end?
I'll take them as they come.
I was just curious on the previous slide, and I think you've covered this a little bit before, but when you outline those properties, those are the ones with a license, so it's not indicating ones that the neighbors have necessarily identified. It's the ones that actually are licensed to be rentals.
No, so this map that is being shown here, this doesn't indicate who has a license or who doesn't. This is just showing people in the community where the owner of the property doesn't live at the property or doesn't have that as their primary residence. So these are likely being operated as a rental, and I'm not sure if they're operating as an illegal rental or as a legal rental, but this was just to give an idea of the what kinds of pressures do people face. Obviously in the College Heights area closer to campus, there's more of a housing pressure to have a rental. It's more likely to succeed there because of its adjacency to Weber State, and you're going to be able to rent that out easier than if you move farther away from campus.
Right, yeah, I just was trying to clarify. Thank
Does that
you.
make
May I ask a related question, Chair?
Yeah.
What is an illegal rental, Clint? Could you define what that is?
Illegal rental. So you can rent a single family home, but you have to stay within what is defined as a single family home by city ordinances, and that can be in a home of related adults. That can be mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, adult children living in the home. That
People
is
by blood or marriage is really what you're saying then.
right. That's considered a legal single family. But when you get into rentals, it's folks that are when you have more than three, generally more than three unrelated adults that are living in a home together. That would be seen as an illegal rental.
So yeah.
Or people that just don't have a license.
You're saying that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And that would be the same for an illegal accessory dwelling units. If they're exceeding what the ordinance allows, or if they just don't have a license, it's also seen as illegal, and that would need to come in compliance. So again, going back to some of the folks in the Forest Green neighborhood, One of the things they felt like was an issue is the issue of enforcement. And I think this is enforcement is certainly an issue for accessory dwelling units, as well as any illegal rental in the community. I think that a lot of people looked at the community and saw that in a lot of situations there were several students living in a single family home, and that's not even an accessory dwelling unit, but that's just an illegal rental situation. But making sure that there's better enforcement of those issues would provide some comfort to the people that live, close to that Weber State University campus. And they felt that if enforcement measures were able to improve in the future, they would be open to reconsidering allowing more accessory dwelling units.
Clint, can I have a question?
Go ahead.
Does the plan or the committee give any recommendation how to enforce either illegal or rentals or ADUs? Do they bring that up at all?
No, that was something that we discussed in house as a city staff. And some of the provisions that are within the plan to help enforcement is one of them is to create a website where people can go and see where all of the rentals or accessory dwelling units, or we're currently working on it for vacation rentals. So if somebody has a question, if they see something going on next door and they want to find out, is this a legal rental, or is this a legal vacation rental, or is this a legal accessory dwelling units, they can go to a website and we'll have a way that they can search and identify where the licenses for legal accessory dwelling units are located, and then that will help in our enforcement issues as well. So if they see that their neighbor maybe has a dot on their property saying that yes, they have a legal accessory dwelling units, then that can put their mind at ease that they've gone through the proper measures and they've got the proper permit from the city to have an accessory dwelling units. Or if there's a concern in terms of housing or how it's being run or operated, and they don't see a dot saying that there's a legal rental, then they can report that to the city for enforcement, and then we can hopefully utilize those folks as well as a resource for those enforcement measures.
Or do we have that website available, or are we?
We have it. It's in the works. I know that it hasn't gone live or anything like that, but it certainly is in the works, and I can maybe see. I think I have it. I may have it bookmarked and might be able to bring that up. Maybe after my presentation, I'll see if I can get into that and see if I can kind of give an idea of what that looks like. I know that one portion of it was the map, and then the other portion was a reporting, an opportunity to report. So it made it really easy. If people didn't see a dot there, they could make a quick report and send it on. But I'll try to bring that up after the presentation, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Clint.
You're welcome. That's if I can find it. It's been a little while since we've worked on that, given the whole pandemic. But so some of the other language amendments that we're looking at, some of the language that was in the plan before in terms of how it addressed multifamily and student housing included the word intrusion, which folks saw that as kind of a negative connotation to associate with multifamily and student housing. And so while that was certainly not the intent of the plan to make that try to paint these multifamily types of housing as a negative asset or a negative impact in the city, we just wanted to clarify that making sure that as those multifamily and student housing developments take place, the single family homes have measures in place to protect them. Currently, there are measures in place today that multifamily housing is required to adhere to in terms of landscaping or setbacks or screening. All of those types of issues would help in mitigating the impact that those more, more intensive types of developments would have. Okay, and this last piece of language here speaks to an email we got from a well-renowned trail traveler and connoisseur, if you will. But there was some language in the plan that kind of pitted the maintenance of the trails, pitted hiker versus biker, and why ruts are occurring, or why certain issues are taking place. And really, that's not the issue at all. But the issue in this specific instance, is the Buse trailhead, is that it was, when it was developed, it just was never properly developed. It wasn't, the design was bad, and so because of changing waterfall and changing conditions, the trail is just eroded. So we didn't want to create an additional kind of controversy within the plan between hiker versus biker. So we just decided to take that language out and clearly just state that that the maintenance issue for this plan, for the trails, needs to be considered in terms of management and then funding for how those improvements take place. So again, this is the process outline. We've been a lot of places, and we've talked with a lot of people. We've taken a lot of comment, and hopefully these final revisions kind of make us comfortable so that we can move forward with a recommendation tonight. And then after a recommendation, the next steps again are going back to that, one of the first ones anyways, is going back to that zoning amendment for accessory dwelling units and determining how that language is going to take place. And then again, that will come back before the city council for approval. As was mentioned in our pre-meeting, I don't think that we want to set any kind of premise that what is recommended by the steering committee. They're clearly a recommending body only. They're not the ones that get voted in, so to speak, and take the brunt of the responsibility. But they clearly are they are a committee that has a vested interest in their area, but not to necessarily require the community or the city to adopt exactly what the steering committee will recommend. But with all of that said, if there's any questions, I would be glad to take what I can and answer it.
Any questions or comments? I might be all commented out on this topic. Okay, well, thank you so much for your presentation, Clint. Again, for all your work on this plan. It's really a comprehensive plan, and I really appreciate all of your efforts. At this time, I think we'll open up the comment period on this particular item only. And just a note that, obviously we have been a lot of discussions about this topic, and we did take quite extensive comments the first time that this was on the agenda. So my guidance would be is if you do have a comment, you may want to direct it toward the change in the language that Clint has presented, versus maybe saying the same things you said before. So that's my one little caveat, if you don't mind. So Brandon, would you mind telling people how they might comment?
Sure, if I could.
Oh, sorry, Clint, yes.
Sorry. So I was able to find that website if you would like to see that.
Well, yeah, that would be great if you don't mind before we open the comment.
Sorry to interrupt that.
No, I appreciate it. I forgot that you were going to look that up. I didn't know you were going to be so fast.
I forgot that I was going to look that up too, and then I remembered right after I stopped my meeting or my.
Anytime, especially in this format, feel free to interrupt me anytime, because it's hard for me to know when people want to speak.
So this is what we're working on for vacation rentals. So you can see these red dots here. And you can see in the legend what they, blue dots are non-owner occupied and the orange dots are owner occupied. So somebody could come in here and look at that dot and click on it and say, okay, all right, these people have a license. The license is active. It gives the information on who the owner is. If there's an emergency contact, they would give that as well. So this is something similar to what we would be looking at for accessory dwelling units, as well as potentially looking at it for all rentals, which would be a little more intensive process, but something that we would probably look into in the future. So, and then on the other side, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to ask if it's live right now.
It is not live right now. It's only within the city, I think. So we haven't, like I said, we were in the process of getting everything finalized, and then COVID hit, and we kind of got sidetracked. So, we'll try to get this back going and get it active again. But
That certainly happened to most of us as well.
Yeah, right. And then on the other side of the web page is again just this opportunity to report or report inquiry. So people can come here and say, this is what I saw going on, and they can attach photos and submit that, and then that will go to our code service people and to our planning people as well. And so we'll be able to do a little bit better process in enforcement. So that was that.
Great. Thanks so much for pulling that up. Any questions or comments about that for Clint? Okay, so yeah, Brandon, I'll let you go ahead and tell people how they might participate.
Thank you, Chair. In order to participate in this comment period regarding the Southeast Ogden Community Plan, you have to be joining us via Zoom and by using the raise hand feature, which is found at the bottom of the application. It does not look like any of the attendees are joining via telephone, so we don't need to go over those instructions. So again, this is for the Southeast Ogden Community Plan only. And with that, we will get things started. Angel Castillo, the time is yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Thank you. Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. Good evening, council members. First off, I'd like to qualify that any of the data I'll be referencing in my statement is from the 2018 Census Bureau, the MLS, and other market studies. So feel free to reach out to me if you'd like any links to this data. Long and the short of it, there is no magic bullet for housing, period. The best that we can do is hope for a comprehensive strategy to ease the pain points, and this strategy involves multifamily dwellings, ADUs, and tiny homes. And if you limit any of those strategies, you're removing a tool from the box to allow our working class families, first-year teachers, firefighters, police, and graduate students to live and work in Ogden. And while Councilmember White encouraged you all to remember that part of our plan involves multifamily dwellings, there's a pending ordinance coming to you soon limiting or abolishing C2, C3 multifamily dwellings. Between limiting ADUs and quite possibly limiting or abolishing C2, C3 multifamily, you'll pretty much guarantee that those that make under $50,000 a year will never be able to afford to live and work in Ogden. And if they can't afford to live here, they take their total impact from tax revenue with them and spend it in another city. That's a loss of $13,469 worth of tax revenue spending per average apartment dweller or ADU occupant. So why are ADUs and multifamily dwellings important? Because if you want people to purchase a single family home or a condo, they need to have financially attainable housing in order to afford purchase down payment. So the current housing availability in Ogden for both rental and single family homes, pretty much 2017 to 2020, the average home price in Ogden has increased 37%. Of all housing units in Ogden, 44.6 are renter occupied, and the average renter vacancy rate is 1.9%. Ogden's population is 87,325, so 44.6 of that equals 38,946 renters. That means only 4.6% of the housing stock is affordable. If you want to make sure that we're going to allow people to stay here and spend money here, we have to allow ADUs, and they do not affect the quality of a single family home neighborhood as they're not visible from the street. And as Councilmember Heyer pointed out during work session, a mask mandate is an invasion of privacy. While limiting ADUs, you're violating property rights and people's pathway to financial stability. I implore you not to remove another housing tool from the toolbox. Don't make the mistake that other cities have made. I've spent a significant amount of time in 2 major cities, and I have been on the front lines of what a housing crisis looks like. And by allowing ADUs, tiny homes, and multifamily dwellings, you're going to alleviate those pain points and keep us from having the ship sink. Please do not limit ADUs. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel.
Marcy, the time is yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Marcy Matonis. I live in Forest Green. My family and I relocated to Utah in 2016 from Florida. We wanted seasons and lower crime and a slower pace. We rented an apartment in downtown Ogden for 6 months. We found the perfect single family home in a low density suburban neighborhood in Forest Green. I learned a short time after we moved there that the ordinance allowing the ADUs included our neighborhood. Sort of ignorant as to the ADU issue, I was actually surprised that the zoning allowed for that. I also learned that because of the minimal notice requirement, most of my neighbors were unaware of the opt-out option that several of our bordering neighborhoods have taken advantage of. I attended the Planning Commission in 2017, shared my concerns. When the issue was brought before the council said, go address the Southeast Plan. It's not been updated in 30 years. The Planning Commission, along with interested neighbors, worked long and hard through steering committees. There were surveys, there were meetings to update the Southeast Plan. I was able to attend a few of the steering committee meetings myself as my work schedule permitted. The ADU issue certainly drums up a lively debate, but when the two opposing sides did come together, opposing neighbors put their heads together, they came up with a compromise, and that is what has been submitted to the court, primarily on a cap on the number of ADUs in the given area. This is a no-brainer to me. This is a density issue, it's a parking issue, it's a traffic issue, it's a compliance issue. There's no code enforcement happening on the ones that are currently up and running. And as previously mentioned, we have a dozen or so in Forest Green alone that are illegal. It is unsettling to me that this council would give a directive to the Planning Commission. The community members would then take the time out of their busy schedules to attend steering committees. A compromise would be presented to the council, and it would not be wholeheartedly accepted by the council, or that certain members would really just sort of dismiss it out of hand. We've had zoning restrictions in place forever. This is not a property rights issue. This is not a free-for-all community. We have laws and rules and regulations and zonings for a reason. If you don't want to be subjected to that, then go live on a deserted island. Again, this is a code enforcement issue, compliance issue. That's all I have at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Heath Sato, the time is yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
I think I just unmuted. Heath Sato, Ogden resident. I just want to say we have growing population pressures in Ogden, and by allowing a single neighborhood of our wealthiest residents, including the mayor, it places all the population pressures on the rest of Ogden, putting the burden on the poorer neighborhoods. If code enforcement is an issue, then enforce code. That's all I've got to say. Took my 30 seconds. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Heath. I was muted.
Jenny, the time is now yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your full name for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, my name is Jenny Nagy. I have commented before about the benefits of ADUs, affordable housing, increased supportive supplemental income for homeowners, and just that it's within an owner's property rights to decide whether or not to have an ADU. I think at this point in the conversation, it's worth saying that I think it's important to listen to community input, definitely, but I think it's important to listen to input from the community as a whole. And I think that we don't want, certainly individual neighborhoods should have space to say, to express themselves of how their neighborhood is planned and developed. But I think we also can't have individual neighborhoods making decisions at the expense of the city as a whole. A little bit unprepared for this, but I think we want to make decisions and think of the Ogden community as a whole. Think about what is good for Ogden as a city, and I think there's, I don't know, space for an individual neighborhood input, but at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the council to do what's best for the city as a whole. That's it.
Thanks, Jenny. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment?
Tom Farrell, the time is yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
I think you'll have to unmute, Tom.
Okay, I would urge the, I'm Tom
Yeah,
Farrell.
say your full name for the record.
Sure, it's Thomas Farrell, and I live in Forest Green. And I would urge the council to accept the steering committee's recommendations. The steering committee and Mr. Spencer spent a significant amount of time getting public input on the effects of ADUs on the individual communities. In our community, in Forest Green alone, we have a number that are illegal. They've never engaged code to, or complied with the code to have their ADUs permitted. That's a code enforcement issue. But the deleterious effect that it has on the neighborhood is the increase on density. This community is zoned for R1. A zoning restriction is not a violation of property rights. Zoning restrictions have been in place for years. What ADUs do, though, is they flip the zoning restrictions on their head and increase the density of the population in that area. And what the effect of this is that it allows for more parking, more traffic, and the effect of that is that the parking becomes now on-street parking. So now we have difficulties with snowplows. We also have difficulties with people who are towing vehicles through the neighborhood, trying to weave in and out of all the vehicles parked on the street. I actually lived in a neighborhood that had quote unquote mother-in-law suites or garage apartments where the neighborhoods were actually zoned for multi-use. So you had single-family residential units interspersed with multifamily. So the neighborhood was actually designed for that purpose. It was a mess because of all the cars parked on the streets because of these multifamily units being dropped into single-family residential areas. We moved into an area for R1 zone for single-family residential areas. We did not move into a multifamily neighborhood because we did not want to have the increased density of multifamily residential areas. And I would ask that the council accept the recommendations of the steering committee and accept that compromise.
Tom, can I ask a clarifying question? So are you
Sure.
agreeing with the change in the language, or are you disagreeing? I guess I'm just not sure when you say accepting the steering committee recommendations. Are you saying you agree with the new language?
I am, yes.
I just want to understand. Thank you.
I disagree with the concept of an ADU, quite frankly. However, I recognize that the commission made this, or the council made this decision years ago. And so I'm willing to accept that with the steering commission's recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy Marqueski, the time is yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
I think you need to unmute, Cindy. There you go.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd just like to start out by thanking the City Council and the Planning Commission. And my respect for you over the past 2.5 years has grown exponentially. Thank you so much for your service with all these decisions. We live in an interesting climate these days where the unity of community is being pulled apart. Respect for opinions of others, tolerances of differences, and so forth. What you had here with this housing steering committee for the updating of the Southeast Community Plan was a polar opposite. It was a thrilling experience to sit on that committee and have people from total opposite opinions come together and work hard, come together with a compromise that meets the needs of all. And it was a privilege to participate in that process. So thank you for allowing that process to work. I want to clarify that we as a steering committee and as a neighborhood are not asking for preferential treatment, but rather we were simply asking for what the Mount Ogden community already has in place, and that is in their community plan an exemption from ADUs. We realized that ADUs are here to stay to some degree, so we were willing to work and compromise so that the needs of all residents are respected and met. It was very clear that there's a 50-50 difference as has been already stated. And so why not compromise and recognize the desires? We can all work together, and it can work well. I just want to point out, I think it's been a little bit the elephant in the room that hasn't been addressed enough yet is the impact of Weber State. We love Weber State. It is a gem in our community, and we want the neighborhoods around it to reflect that. They do need to be protected from university sprawl. It's so important. You've seen in other communities where the neighborhoods have had an imbalance with student housing, and stable single-family neighborhoods become blighted. We don't want that to happen on our beautiful East Bench. I want to emphasize, I think, something that's really lacking in the community is education about ADUs and the importance of the licensing and meeting all of the code requirements. And of course, also the enforcement issue as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. So I guess I just wanted to ask you the same follow-up question. So are you saying you also agree with the changed language that's been proposed?
Yes, I am saying that, and I wanted to point out that one of the points, was about the previous decisions for areas that have stemmed from petitions in other areas. But yes, I am approving the new language. Thank you, Clint.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised this time about this topic. So unless there's further discussion, I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Chair, motion to close the public hearing.
That wasn't a public hearing, Councilmember Nadolski. It was just public input, but thank you.
Sorry.
No, thanks. I appreciate the motion.
Chair, I'd like to propose that we adopt the proposed ordinance 2020-30 with the substitute language that Clint proposed earlier to us in our, with the proposed language. I don't remember all of it, so I won't.
Is that sufficient, Glenn? Just want to make sure.
Yeah, I think if possible, we'd like to make it a two-step process or a two-vote process. So I think we'd recommend that you make a motion and take action to substitute that Exhibit A with the new exhibit, with the new plan, with the new language, and then you can vote on the ordinance with the substitute amendment. I think that might make it a little bit easier as far as process goes.
All right, then I make the motion that we substitute the language in Exhibit A.
I second it.
So a motion by Councilmember White and a second by Councilmember Stevens to substitute the language. And would this be a voice vote or a roll call vote?
Janine can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's a roll call vote.
A roll call vote. Thank you. Hey, I was on the right track. Thank you all so much for your support. I really appreciate it.
Councilmember Heyer?
No.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
I see him, but he's, yep, start you. I can see your mouth moving. Aye?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair Chaburka?
No, and that passes. Councilmember Hyder, would you like to comment on your no vote?
Yes, I, in the work session, I talked about a precedent-setting thing, and Cindy Markeski kind of reinforced that when she referenced Mount Ogden community having an exemption from ADUs. I think that much of this discussion centers around a misunderstanding of ADUs. I do understand the anxiety. I honestly do. I am not seriously opposed to this amendment, but philosophically, I think we've kind of gone down this path in the wrong direction, and that's why I voted the way I did on this part of this this motion.
Thanks, and yeah, I concur with Councilmember Heyer that I just have some challenges around this particular part of the plan. That's all. Okay, would anybody like to propose another motion?
I'll make the motion that we adopt ordinance 2020-30 with the amended Exhibit A language.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember White, and this is a roll call vote. This is to adopt the Southeast Community Plan with the exception, with the change.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
No, that passes. Finally, we can celebrate that the Southeast Community Plan has passed. Congratulations, Clint and your team, and Glenn for all of your work as well on this project. We really appreciate it. I should probably just comment on my no vote. I think you guys kind of know where I stand. I do sincerely appreciate the community engagement in this project. I just fundamentally disagree with the decision around the housing plan, but the rest of the plan is really awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, could I make a comment also?
Please.
I have the same conflict that you do, I believe, surrounding this. And now that the steering committee will be engaging on the discussions around this, I hope that they will focus on a percentage rather than a distance separation. I think everybody that wants to be able to do it to a point, you know, I get that if 80% of the community all did ADUs, it could be a problem. But I hope that we can recognize that it is a property rights issue, as much as some people would like to think it's not. I hope they'll focus on the percentage only and not a distance separation issue. I can't get around the distance separation.
Thanks, and thank you all so much for all your engagement around the plan. I think it was really great conversations and hopefully provided some additional education for people around ADUs, rentals, property rights, and all these enforcement issues along with it.
Chair, can I comment?
Yeah.
Sorry, was that you, Councilmember Heyer, and then Nadolski?
Yeah, I just was saying that I really liked the map that planning is coming up with. That is going to be a tool that's going to get some traction, I think. I love that they're doing that. I think that's a great thing.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Thank you. I just want to say that I have admittedly gone back and forth a lot on this one. This was a hard decision to make, but I leaned the way I did because I just feel like I agree with the committee, and not only for this neighborhood, but potentially for other neighborhoods as well. And that if there are concerns about inequities and burdens being carried by one neighborhood that are not being carried by this, I would just say that I also would support in future community plans if those processes were as robust as this one, and that the feedback from that neighborhood was similar to the feedback that this community has provided, that we would strongly consider the same limitations or exemptions at that time. And so I think that in my view, I think that the committee made a reasonable and very responsible recommendation for the neighborhood, especially in light of the uniqueness of proximity to the students and our awesome university. And I would not be opposed to entertaining the same limitations in other neighborhoods if that's what's wanted. I've heard a lot of people say it's not fair that they get to have an exemption and we don't. And to me, that suggests that they want an exemption too, or some sort of limitation, I should say. I mean, and if that's the case, then that's something that we need to know and address in a community plan by community plan process. Thanks.
Thanks. Any other comments?
Yeah, I just have a quick comment. I too had a hard time with this process. Not the process. I am a very process person, actually. It was a tough decision on all levels and all issues. But what it came down to me, just so you know, that it's more than just, again, the ADUs. The other thing that we have to realize is that I think Mr. Farrell actually said it correctly in that he moved into an area where it was an R1 and he has property rights as well. And so we have to be careful when we make decisions and say just easy answers of it's a property rights issue that they can have ADUs. It's not. I mean, we have to look at all sides of the coin. So, but this was good for everyone to, we've engaged our council once again on a really hard topic. So thank you. Thank you, Clint, by the way, and thank you, Glenn.
Absolutely. Great conversations.
Chair, can I also add my appreciation to Clint as well and the community that participated? I think that I just can't imagine a process being more fair and transparent than what Clint oversaw, and that has got to count for quite a bit for all of us. And I just want you to know, Clint, that how much I appreciate the process and that the comments I made early on for me stood true. And the quality of the work that you did played an important role in the decision I made tonight. And that it was also clear in the folks that I talked to from the community just how honorable and ethical you are as a man and the character that you carried throughout the process. So I very much commend you for that, both as a planner for the city, but as a man. Thank you for all of that.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I just want to also recognize our staff and city staff here. It makes things easy to look good. Glenn and Greg and our planning staff with Joe and Brooke and Amber have all been very helpful, and certainly not to leave out the Southeast Ogden community as well. They've been a very involved community, which is a real breath of fresh air. So thank you for those. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, well, now we're to the section in our agenda where we have the opportunity for attendees to address the council regarding any concerns or ideas. This is the public comment portion. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes and remain as civil as you possibly can. Brandon, do you mind explaining to the group, although they seem like regulars, but we'll do it one more time just in case.
Sure. To participate in public comments, you have to be joining us via Zoom and use the raise hand feature found at the bottom of your screen. Amy Wicks, the time is yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes, as Chair Chaburka said, and state your name for the record.
All right. Thank you, Amy Wicks, Ogden resident. I am just back here again this week, as I said I would be until you deal with the issue, to speak about recycling. Last week, there was commitment from administration to fix the Ogden City website, to update the information that what you put in your blue can is not being recycled, and to let citizens know about that. That false information is still on the city website. Nothing's happened there. So I am just asking the question, you know, how hard is it to fix the website? It shouldn't be. It should be something that could be quickly fixed. We have a lot of highly paid communications people within the city that can wordsmith that and deal with that. So do your jobs, fix the website. Don't lead people to believe that you're recycling when you're not. I would also like to challenge you to change your mindset that recycling should be a moneymaker for the city. People's utility bills went from around $25 in 2005 to about $75 now if you have the smallest trash can and use the least amount of water possible for a household. We've added a lot of things. Stormwater. We're taking care of, you know, what's downstream. Recycling is taking care of what's downstream or taking care of the future. It's keeping perfectly good materials out of a landfill. It's making it so that we don't have to look for additional landfill space in the future. So I would encourage you to continue to hold administration's toes to the fire and, you know, get a timeline for it so citizens know what to expect, and, you know, don't don't expect us to continue sorting our recyclables just because it's a good habit to have. You know, bring that service back. That's one of the few things you should be doing as a city. And just one last thing regarding masks, you know, judging from the city council Facebook cover photo, some of the city council members don't understand basic science and support wearing masks, but I would encourage the city to listen to the governor. He doesn't seem to want to take political pressure for that. Our mayor doesn't seem to want to take that pressure either, but it's in his lap now. We know science tells us wearing a mask can help keep communities safe and prevent the spread of COVID-19. And if we want to keep businesses open and keep kids and teachers and schools safe, we need to do that as a community. So I would encourage you to pass something regarding that.
Thanks, Amy. Any other comments?
Angel Castillo, the floor is yours. Please limit your time to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Thank you, Angel Castillo, Ogden resident. Well, as I'm sure you all know, I'm not pleased that there was a limitation on ADUs. So I'd like to take this time to just revisit some of the affordability issues that I believe should be driving the majority of your land use decisions, because I know that some of you sit on the Wasatch 2050 Council and know that that 5 million number for Utah is real by 2050. And most of that population is going to be here and in Salt Lake. And we're going to need to be prepared for housing. And as I said before, I've seen it happen firsthand where cities have been unprepared for allowing workforce housing. And when I say workforce housing, I mean the people that work at Costco. I'm talking about your baristas. I'm talking about your medical receptionists. And again, I'm talking about the first year fire, police, and teachers and grad students from Weber. If people to be able to live and work here and stay here, if you want your kids to come back to Ogden and stay here, they're going to need to afford housing. And you know, we're just exploding. I mean, from 2017 to 2020, the average home price has increased by 37%. And during 2019, the median price for a single family 2-bedroom home is $270,000 and the average price is $310,000. For a 3-bedroom home, the median price is $335,000 with an average of $355,000. Households have to earn between 59 and 97% of area median income to find affordable housing that they can make a down payment, that they can actually make those rents. And we are not accommodating for that. And we need to accommodate for that by non-traditional. We're not going to do it by building more single family homes. You know, real estate is still going to go up, and that's good for the city because the tax revenue comes in. But at the same token, we have a renter population that we have to address. And multifamily housing is the answer. And one thing that I do applaud in the South Ogden plan is that I fully support making sure that multifamily is along arterial lines. The last thing I want anybody to do is plop a 100-unit apartment building in the middle of a single family residence. It just doesn't make sense, but it needs to be on a transit line or the main arterial streets. And that's one of the reasons why ADUs were such a good answer, because you don't see it from the street. It allows people to be able to become financially independent. It allows young couples to be able to save to buy their home. So I urge you to really think about where we're going with housing affordability and keep this in mind when those committees come back to you and make recommendations. And very much importantly, when you see the C2, C3 multifamily ordinance that might be eliminating multifamily. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel. I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time. Is there last call for comments?
Chair?
Yes.
I'd take a few minutes if possible.
I'm wondering, Doug, should we let the mayor make his comments first and then it's council comments? Would that be okay?
Be fine. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, no problem. I'm just trying to follow the agenda. I don't always do that, so. Great. Yeah, I don't see any other hands, so now I'd like to invite Mayor Caldwell if you'd like to make any comments.
Thanks, Councilman. I appreciate that. I also want to add my gratitude to the planning department for all the community engagement they did. This was an emotional issue for a lot of people. We've seen that. We've heard about it, and we respect that. Would like to address a couple things that were said. The recycling information that we promised to update on the website has been updated, and we'd promised to get back to you in 2 weeks with options in terms of what the costs are to go to a lot of different options, and we still have a plan to get that to you by next Tuesday in that work session. So we're working on that. We appreciate that. But again, this Southeast Community Plan, there were some accusations taken at me. I didn't participate in that at all. It was the community. I sat on my hands and let the community around us decide what they wanted to do. I think those are unfair accusations because it was a very robust and open process, and we've appreciated everybody that came on board and those that were willing to engage and invest in that, and we're very grateful for that. So with that, I just want to again say we appreciate everything everybody's doing in this era of COVID and some of the crazy. I'll just give a personal example. Like my daughter's an athlete. We got a note that she was going to be accepted into her D1 program, and they were bringing athletes in. We drove out on Wednesday. On Friday, before she was supposed to move in on Monday, they sent us an email out. Ben could probably relate to a lot of this with Big Sky Athletics and everything else. Well, pump the brakes. That's not going to happen. We're going to have to retool it and refigure some things out. So there are no concrete answers to this. I think we're over 2 weeks in a row of declining cases in Weber County. I think for the most part, people have taken personal responsibility to wear masks and be responsible and do what they can to help slow this. I want to thank the school district. If you didn't see, we had a Facebook Live with Rich Nye, the superintendent of the school district, and they talked a lot about what they're trying to do to bring kids back to school, to have some regularity, understanding the need for kids to, there's an educational component, but there's also a socialization component that kids need. And we're just all in an unprecedented time. So we've appreciated our community coming together, wearing masks, being responsible, being patient with each other, being kind with each other, standing each other up. And that's what I hope we can continue to do. You have our commitment to look at these issues and do what we can. I think it's unfair to say that people are kicking the can down the road and not taking responsibility for things that are happening around us. That's not the case at all. It's not the case with all of our department directors. It's not the case with the school district and the other groups that I engage in. I'm real proud of what's happening in Ogden and with our community and with the school district and everything else. These are unprecedented times, and people are not asleep at the switch as they're looking at what we need to do and how we can approach this and continue to be healthy with our economy, but continue to be healthy with each other. And so I appreciate everybody's patience and kindness as we go through this. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Caldwell. Okay, Councilmember Stevens, I know you had something to say if you'd like to go first.
Thanks, Chair. I was looking forward to be able to watch Weber State play this fall, but I understand the situation and the conditions that we're in, and so I wore my purple shirt in lamenting that that opportunity. But we in our work session, we as a council, under council business, we talked about the importance of masks, and we've given some directions, and hopefully the comments that were taken will be coming forth. I appreciated Councilmember Lopez and his ideas, and I think we as a council have indicated in that work session that we're going to be the leadership, an example of the importance of wearing a mask. My wife and I, we do that all the time. This Southeast Community Plan was not a very easy. In fact, it was very difficult. It could have gone either way, but I personally want to thank our council staff, especially Glenn, on our council there, staff that in his input. I think he did a great job in trying to analyze the Southeast Community Plan and give us as council members the information that we needed at the particular time. And also the planning. Clint, I think you did an outstanding job. And as Ben mentioned, it was very transparent. And your presentation was right to the point. We could understand some of the negatives and some of the positives of this community plan, and all community plans has that. But you did a great job in there, and it speaks volume of not only your expertise, but also the expertise of Greg Montgomery and your entire department that works there. Next, I would like to go to the community. As Ben mentioned, I hope that in all situations, or in most situations, that we could have the community come and voice their concerns and their suggestions. That's what makes an effective community, is we could see that you have an interest in not only the area where you live, but also the city of Ogden. The steering committee, I want to thank them for the time and effort that they spent on this community plan. It had many avenues to go on, and I think they presented and listened. And the word that I heard Cindy mentioned several times was that there were two sides on this steering committee, but they were able to compromise and come together. And I think that's the importance of good government, is when we can come together and compromise in that aspect there. I just appreciate the feedback. We still have a lot to do. This is not the first and last step. There are going to be many steps in between, and the council and the council staff and the planning commission and the citizens will have many or a lot to do in formulating the importance of some of the issues that were in this community plan. So I thank you all, and I hope you stay safe and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Chair, I'd like to make just a quick comment. Well, maybe a couple quick comments. One, earlier when we were having the discussions about the mask, I just wanted to say that those ideas were as much as were Councilmember Nadolski's ideas as they were mine. I need to give him credit because we came up with them together. So there's that. And I also wanted to quickly mention that I know it's not the appropriate time now, but I just wanted to say quickly that we worked with the mayor to find a Christmas Village cottage to dedicate it to fallen officers so that we can display at Christmas Village. And they found one cottage that is available to do that. So if there's any way, Chair, that maybe if this could be a part of a conversation that maybe we can have in maybe council business one of these days, I just would really like to see if other council members are interested in coming together and doing this collaboratively and figuring out a way, maybe even to partner with the police department and some of whoever wants to partner with us in laying out a plan to I think bring something that I think is going to be really amazing and beautiful. So and lastly, I just wanted to thank everyone for just the really, I think, amazing relationships, cordial and kind relationships that we maintain in our government, even though we don't always agree, and we debate and we share our ideas and beliefs. But I think that we're always very respectful, and we work well together along with the administration. So thank you to everybody for that.
Thanks, Councilmember Lopez. And maybe we could do an update next week during the work session about the cottage. I don't know what the latest news on that is. Any other comments?
Well, just for the record, the ball was in my court. Janine did talk to me about it, and I told her that I was going to get back with her, and I never did. That's why I'm
okay.
Yes.
I couldn't remember where we were on it, just that we did find the cottage that wasn't being used. So
it was me. It was me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Great. Any other comments?
Yeah, just for a few minutes. Louise, if I can help in any way, give me a call and see if I can help you in any way with that project. I think that's a great project.
Councilmember Nadolski, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think Councilmember Lopez is being modest. Those were his ideas. He deserves support for that. And but I am glad that when he asked for advice and I give my opinion, that he listened, and I hope that we as a council can take his ideas seriously, and that we can get support from the administration to lead by example and provide voluntary and incentive-based options for our community to participate with us. And I just wish our community would be more mindful about the times that we're in. I just feel like it's something that we can never be too mindful of, is my point, and that that those ideas are things that would add to the efforts that have already happened, that have gotten us far along the road, but we can do better and always should do better. So appreciate everybody's support on that.
Thanks. Any other last comments? Okay, well, yeah, I appreciate everybody's efforts this evening, and I think we've said about all that can be said. Would anybody like to offer a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A motion to adjourn by Councilmember.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Lopez. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you, guys. Have a good night. Oh, I didn't say, is anybody opposed? Anybody want to stay? Okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Stay safe.